was a time in my life when I had a lot of anger and resentment against my dad. I used to always compare my dad to my friends' dads, and I used to question God or Mother Nature as to why my father could not be as loving and kind and nurturing or as rich as my friends' dads. And this led to a lot of unmet expectations and frustrations and quite a dysfunctional family as well. Luckily, a book called Karma Sutra by Hingori came my way, and this completely changed my perspective because I realized that rather than expecting my dad to be a certain way and do X, Y, Z for me, it was me rather who had a lot of karmic debts towards him, because it was my father who actually gave my spirit a physical entry into this world and allowed me to become me. It was my father that worked very hard to provide me with food, shelter, and clothing. I'm 38 years old now and still living in his house. Karma Sutra, the book, made me think about was, would it be fair to expect my father to change and continue to do more for me, or would it be smarter and much more sensible for me to try and accept my father on an as-is, where-is basis? This book made me, completely alter my thinking. And I'm so grateful because now I've spent a lot of my time in trying to repay my karmic debts to my father by taking him for a walk, helping him, cook a nice meal, or watching a nice movie on Netflix, or cheering him up with a joke sometimes. I'm so grateful now because I know that when I die now, a lot of my debts to my father will be repaid. And I'm extremely grateful to Hingori for this simple but very, very profound wisdom. Thank you.
The book Karma Sutra helps one to realize that our lives are dictated by destinies, and the destinies are in turn determined by karmas of all our previous lives. The book gives a glimpse into all the different elements of a karma and how we can improve our karmic balances. Improving karmic balances is just the first step of the journey, whose end goal is to be free from all the karmas. That is, to not take ownership of any of our actions. The book has helped me to be more mindful of my actions and to strive for spiritually selfish decisions.
The book Karma Sutra changed my life. It made me rich, and it can make you rich too. Soul rich. The book talks about karmic debt towards your parents who brought you to this world, about your teachers who gave you education, a guru who showed you the path, Mother Nature that provided you with food, shelter, water. Also, it explains about animal kingdom. Example, a cow whose milk you drank. By planting trees, feeding all life forms, educating underprivileged kids, donating clothes, providing medication to the needy, and most important, have an attitude to help others. This will not only help you be rich this life, but also for your journey ahead. Thank you, Hingori.
Namaskar and good evening, everybody. Team Hingori Sutras welcomes you. Today, we will be learning a little bit more about the mind. Food is our life source. The food we eat impacts in every area of our lives, even though sometimes we may not be aware of its impact. It is not just about filling our stomachs and satisfying our appetites. There is a link between the food we eat and how it affects every level of our being, especially our mind. Be aware of being aware of this makes food a powerful force in our lives to propel us forward on our spiritual journey. To understand the effect food has on our mind, we have with us Ambika Nair, a senior clinical nutritionist at Jupiter Hospital, Pune, Director Mind Nutritional Needs, co-convener, Vice President at IDAF Pune chapter. She is also a certified NLP coach, REBT, EFT, BFT therapist. And now over to Ambika. A very warm welcome to you, Ambika. आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है.
Thank you, Anjali, for the kind introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, Ambika. Please do start.
Thank you. So, thank you, Hingori Sutras, for giving me this opportunity to have a conversation once again with all of you to help me share my thoughts on mind over food. It's been a great pleasure to be associated with Hingori Sutras over the few sessions that we have had. So today we are going to talk about a very different kind of a experiential topic about the role of mind over food. I think all of you are aware of this concept of you are what you eat. How profound is this notion in life? Are we stopping and thinking exactly what we eat? Does it have an impact in our mind? Are we even contemplating of the fact of the foods that we consume or the beverages that we consume, the effect that they have in our mind? Today, let's try a humble attempt to work on ourselves and on our mind. As we all know, let thy food be thy medicine and let thy medicine be thy food. This was a very, very famous saying, which was given by Hippocrates 2000 years ago. The evidence base is increasing that we should re-examine his counsel as the effect of good food has profound implications for brain health as well as our spiritual well-being. Why are we here today? Are we going to talk only about food or are we going to talk about the mind? Now, how does the food affect you? I think all of us have a lot of experiences with various kinds of foods, and all of us know which food suits us and which doesn't suit. But is it that we are going to discuss today, or what is it that we are exactly going to go back with? Food is just not what we eat. The most important, message that I would like to share today is it is about what we feel, what we think, what we are feeding ourselves spiritually, and how are we using our energy to either serve us or drain us. I think if you can see the coffee mugs over here, all of you know that coffee gives us instant energy. But after a period of time, the same coffee is going to be repeated over again. The reason why, because the energy rush which the coffee mug gave, in few hours, it just drains down. Again, we get into the mode of again taking another cup of coffee, which means we are getting into the cycle of coffee actually draining us and not actually helping us. So to know more about such foods, let's have a healthy discussion about what is the food which has an impact on the mind. I want all of you to pause for a moment. Just ask yourself, what has drawn me to come here today? What do I want to get out of today? We will just take a moment. Let's contemplate and ask ourselves, what has drawn me? What am I going to get? What is it that I have to work on? What are the foods which have actually impacted my mind? If you want, you can just note it down in a piece of paper, and let's see how these foods are really going to be useful or not useful, and do we have to replace them in your life. Therefore, we are here in this talk to expand our spiritual energy through the food that we eat. In the physical realm, we all know mind plays a very important role. Never mind the mind. Mind is a mirror. We have a lot of connotations about mind. It's called as a monkey brat. Mind is a slave and a master too. So, what are we going to do? Are we going to make the mind the master, or are we going to master the mind? Mind is the ego of a camel. Mind can create pain, and the same mind can destroy pain. Mind can perform miracles. So, why not miracles with us about the food we eat? So, therefore, body and mind are associated with each other. Let's understand, why do we need to work on our mind? If you contemplate, or if you ask yourself, what happens when your mind is cluttered? Let's put it the other way around. When you're having a cluttered mind, or it's filled with thoughts, or it is filled with emotions, are we able to do the things that we really want to do? Are we able to uh, have empathy, or are we able to do any kind of service to anybody when our own mind is completely filled with emotions or thoughts? So why are we doing this? What is the need for us to work on our mind? The main reason is to absorb and to work and free our mind, to create more space for the spiritual concepts, for the spiritual energy that we are actually working on. To make it possible for the mind to, is it possible to make it empty? This is a question that you have to ask yourself. I'm sure we can't empty our mind, but is it possible at least to create a space, a better space for absorbing the better concepts of spiritual energy? I'm sure yes. Can we do something to work on our mind so that the same mind can be used to do seva, to have empathy on other person, or to do mantra vidya? As we all know, mantra vidya has got a powerful place in the spiritual energy. What it does to us, we all know the importance of mantra vidya. So, what does mantra vidya do? Actually, it helps us to grow our aura and helps us evolve. And when our mind is calm, and when we are able to do the seva, and we are not absorbed with emotions, definitely we create a better space for absorbing the spiritual concepts. To make it more stable as much as possible in most situations of our life can be one of our goals. Now, this is also a main reason why we need to work on our mind, because seva is a very important aspect for spiritual growth. So, therefore, to focus more on our spiritual growth, to free our mind, is the most important task, or the most important aspect that we need to work with ourselves. Now, let's understand how we can do this. How can we do seva when we are obsessed with ourselves? Ask yourself these questions. How are we going to have any kind of empathy for others when we are caught up with our own emotions? So, when we are going through any kind of pain, or even pleasure for that matter, both are going to be filled with thoughts, right? Thoughts about yourself, nothing but just yourself. Then where is the free space for working about or thinking of others or helping others? So how can we meditate when our mind is never allowing us to sit for meditation? So let's work on the mind on a different aspect today, which is using the mind to work on the food that we eat. So let's work more diligently with this concept of mind over food. So, food is one aspect that can help you make a space in the mind. That's what we understood now. But is it the only aspect? I'm sure no. It is just one more aspect which is going to help you to work on yourself. How can we feed our soul? What do you think about this concept of feeding our souls? When I say feed the soul, am I talking about going to a restaurant or going to a high class Michelin start cuisine, and where we are like loaded with a whole variety of foods? And are we going to feed our soul that way? Or what is it that I'm exactly talking about when I say when we feed our soul? It is nothing but simply creating that space, that free space in us to work more on our spiritual growth. So, being we are spiritualists, or we are spiritual beings in the human form. So, basically, working on that concept, let's take ahead this session of today, where I'm going to talk more about nutritional psychiatry. So, this is a new concept that's actually evolved. So you will come to know that the concept of role of food over mind has been there over the years, but now there is a scientific evidence based researches which have proved that more stressful you are, the more caught up with the modern world, so-called stressful life, we are again and again getting caught with emotions. Therefore, we are not able to reach that spiritual path, or we are not able to get into the spiritual path. So the concept for today is going to be more scientific reasons or evidence-based researches, based on which we are going to talk about the role of food of the mind. The modern lifestyle, we all know it's very stressful, may be stressful for some or may not be for others. But it's no secret that most of us are going through some kind of stress. It can be either physical or emotional, or it can be financial, or any other kind of stress which we are not able to cope up. So there are so many things that we are competing for our attention in this technological age. We are on an edge and always forever wired. We are like always our thoughts go into this speed of next what is the action that we are always into. So for many of us, we know that meditation is really useful. It is a beautiful way to find stillness and quiet the mind, but many people find this quite challenging. So they can't get past the racing thoughts and fidgeting body. What a lot of people don't realize is that the food that we eat play a huge role in our ability to reach that deep meditative state. So, our nervous system and brain simply will not allow you to transcend your body when certain nutrients are not present, or when you are in a state of nutritional stress. So, then what do? We actually eat without thinking about the food that is getting inside our body. Also, we do not stop identifying whether this food is actually working on our physical body or on our mental body. So therefore we lose the connection between our own spiritual self, and therefore we start getting into the so-called vicious cycle of stress mode, and again eating mode, and again into the stress mode, therefore not achieving anywhere. So let us just understand through a simple case study. I wanted you all to just understand this simple case, which is actually a research case study which was conducted in the National Institute of Health. This is a recent study which they have proved that a lot of attention needs to be given on your food history when you treat a patient. This was done in a psychiatric department, where they have identified a case, a 43-year-old man who had visited a psychiatrist for low mood swings, mood disorder, or having a low mood or irritability for around 2 months. He had a history of attention deficit disorder, which was diagnosed 2 years ago. He reports low appetite, fatigue, and difficulty in sleeping. He notes that he tends to be quite irritable during meal times, to the extent that his wife has asked him to stay at work past dinner time to stay out of the way. So he feels guilty and concerned about not connecting emotionally to his young children, ages 1 and 3. Further history and medical workup reveal no substance use, no active medical issues, and the blood work reveals no abnormalities. So finally, they say blame it on some psychological, disorder, which is the reason for his, ill health. Now, evidence is rapidly growing that dietary recommendation assists recovery, meaning when you're going to have the right food choice, there is going to be a lot of improvement in your mental disorders. So the food choice is strongly implicated in mental health risk in cases like these. So what is generally recommended is a food history. It's a vital piece of data, both in assessing low appetite as a symptom of depression. Furthermore, a food history is very important to understand the targeted dietary recommendation so that it could assist in recovery. So, after a thorough dietary history was taken with this patient, it was found that this patient, he is generally not hungry at all in the morning and he was skipping breakfast. You can relate, all of you out here could relate if any of you all are doing this kind of eating habits like skipping breakfast or eating lunch which is often rushed, or probably skipping a meal because you don't have the time. So the same thing has happened with this case, where there is, lunch was often rushed and he usually consumes a bowl of cold cereal with skim milk at his desk. So because he didn't have the time, he was an entrepreneur, and there was a lot of things which is like, wired one after the other. So dinner was quite variable. Sometimes it used to be the heavy dinners outside or the business dinners, etc. And in for snacks, he used to carry with him crackers and low-fat granola bars. So after a thorough dietary history, there was nutrition education which was provided to him. Regarding the importance of adequate nutrition for his mental health. So those foods which would help in his mental health condition was prescribed, and there was a remarkable change in his mental health disorder. So after a few weeks, when he came back for the visit, after following all the dietary guidelines, definitely with the help of the psychiatrist and the counselor and the dietitian, it is a support team which works on a particular patient. Therefore, he came back with a great improvement, showing great improvement in his mental well-being. And he himself started giving a lot of answers related to self-efficacy. He was able to decide his breakfast timings much better than before. He started eating breakfast on time. He started eating lunch on time. After a few weeks, he states that despite not feeling hungry when he wakes up, he still had his breakfast, and he found that subjectively he was better 10 minutes or so after having breakfast. He also introduced some nuts or snacks or cookies or low fat granola bars, and he took with him always a pack of fruit or vegetable. And he found that his irritability improved. So, what does it mean? It simply means there is something beyond the aspect called mental health disorder or a disease condition, which needs to be only intervened through medications. There is something called nutritional intervention which can help, or a diet which can help him change his mood disorders, or help him ease the symptoms of his mental condition. So therefore, let us understand what are those foods. And before we understand the exact foods that are actually useful for the mind, let me also give you some information about what is nutritional psychiatry. So nutritional psychiatry is a very new concept which talks about the role of food on the mind in a more research perspective. So within this field of nutrition psychiatry, this is a center in Australia, which is called as a Food and Mood Center. And they do leading researches. They have multidisciplinary researchers team, which focuses more on what we eat influences our brain, mood, and mental health. So after identifying a lot of conditions, they have globally agreed that there are certain foods which are excellent for calming the mind, for relieving the stress, for helping us free ourselves with thoughts, or helping us stick to some routine, or creating more balanced healthy eating habits in our system. So therefore, let's understand what are these conditions which were studied, and what are the effect of the foods that had helped in these conditions. So let me just give you a gist of the diseases related to the food and mind. I think all of you must be aware of the diseases which I'm going to share. I think we must have heard these names many times, but I wanted to reiterate today that how the gut actually helps in preventing the anxiety related symptoms. And when we are going to feed the gut, by gut, I mean your own gastrointestinal system. So there is a growing body of evidence out there about bidirectional connection between the gut and the brain, and it's called as the gut-brain axis. So the rate of irritable bowel syndrome and other functional gastrointestinal disorders were 4 times higher in people with anxiety than those who don't have anxiety. And it is the vice versa too. The rate of anxiety was also 5 times higher in people with irritable bowel rather than those without irritable bowel syndrome, which means there is a bidirectional connection between the gut and the brain. So therefore, what are the foods which actually helped in these are curds, probiotics, lactobacillus. These have anxiety reducing properties. So wanted to inform you that there are so many foods which we can focus on about the food and the mind. So let us just understand the newer concept of food and mind and the nutritional psychiatry. Let's understand what is an eating disorder. Eating disorder simply means that these are mental illnesses that cause serious disturbances in a person's everyday diet. It can manifest as an eating extremely small amounts of food or severe overeating. This condition may begin as just eating too little or too much food, but obsession with eating food takes over the life of a person, leading to severe changes. So these are the types of eating disorders like anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorders. And there are a lot of non-specified disorders too, like obesity is also an eating disorder. Underweight is also an eating disorder, but underweight, if it goes to a greater extent, it leads to a condition called as anorexia nervosa, which is self-limiting of food. So let's understand these signs and symptoms of any of these eating disorders. So when we talk about anorexia, you can see that the person looks at the mirror, she feels that she's overweight. She is not overweight, she's thin, but she feels that she's overweight. So this thought is completely from the mind, which convinces the person saying that, no, you are thin, you have to lose more weight. So the signs are dramatic weight loss, refusal to eat certain foods or food categories, consistent excuses to avoid situations involving food, excessive and rigid exercise routine. So whenever a person eats even a bite of chocolate, you rush and go and compensate by doing some kind of exercise and constantly thinking about the food that you took, or withdrawal from usual friends, relatives, so that, and just say that I won't eat. So if you go to a party, you need to eat, so you try to restrict yourself to eat. So this is a very, very complicated condition and definitely requires medical as well as a counselor's help. Bulimia. This is also another eating disorder, which one starts to consume large amount of food at once. So at the point of consuming the food, the person does not think that they are taking large amount of food, but once the food goes into the system, they immediately say that, we need to purge it out or vomit or, use laxatives or over exercise to get rid of the food that they ate. So meaning this is also a very, very psychiatric condition related to food. So the binge eating disorder, in which someone eats a lot of food, but what they do is they do not vomit. They just eat, and do not move, or they just go to sleep, or indulge in more and more of addictions of food as well as beverages. So they do not understand, there is no point where they could understand that I am eating more or I am eating less. So they have lost that sense of understanding. So this is again a disease of the mind, which causes a lot of nutritional disturbances. So what are the reasons for these? The main reasons are psychological factors like low self-esteem, feelings of inadequacy, feeling of out of control, response to change, or response to stress, or any kind of personal illness. These are the main reasons of these disorders. So when I talked about these disorders, so what are the foods generally people consume in excess? I think when I show you this food, you may be wondering, why is she showing this food? Am I allowed to eat this food or not? What is your answer in your mind? Can you eat the food or not eat the food? What does it say? I think all of us have eaten one food or the other at one point of time, right? When you see the slide, I'm sure we have eaten this chocolate. I'm sure we have eaten those biryanis, or I'm sure you have eaten a laid meal. So definitely all of us. But do we get addicted? So there is a difference between something called as a like, or something going beyond that, which is called as an addiction, or which is called as a craving. You can like a food, yes, I love to eat this, I like to eat it, that is allowed. What is it that we go beyond that? Beyond that is a state where we can't control the same food that we require over and over again. The same food, when it increases, is called as addiction. So there are two things which I always recommend the patients, is that fasting and feasting is quite easy, right? Fasting is like when you are going to decide and do, maybe for a religious reason or maybe for any other reason, we say that from morning till evening I'm not going to have anything. So you have decided, because with your mind, with your willpower of your mind, you decided that I'm not going to have, right? Feasting is like, yes, I'm going to indulge today, there's a party, or today there's going to be wedding in my family, I'm going to eat. So both of these are easy. But what is difficult, or what is the most important thing that we need to actually focus on, is balancing or moderation. So moderation between fast and feast is little difficult. So that is where we can control our mind, or probably I shouldn't use the word control our mind, we need to master our mind. So master our mind in such a way that we are the masters of the mind and not mind being the masters of us. So these are some of the foods. Most of the patients, they come with the fact, with this kind of an issue of, I take a lot of tea, I take a lot of coffee every day. There are some youngsters who are habituated to take a lot of aerated drinks, so they can't be without it. There is a craving for such beverages like tea, coffee, cola, ice creams, milkshakes, etc. So what is craving actually? So is taking 2 cups of tea, coffee allowed or not? So anything is moderation is allowed. So when you consider tea contains excellent qualities of tannins and flavonoids, which are helpful for your heart health, which are helpful for your general health. But if you're going to take the same tea in more amounts, it's going to cause a problem. So the vicious cycle, as I said earlier, it starts like this. I took a cup of tea, I felt better. I felt stimulated. I started my work on the computer. I worked for an hour. I again feel like, my rush is reduced. I need to go again and take another sip of tea or another cup of tea. So again, what I do is again, I go and have another cup of tea and say that now this is my last cup. I took already 2 to 3 cups. But after a point, we stop, we just forget, or we just don't understand where we need to stop. We are just so much focused on the work that we forget to understand that our body has already said no. And slowly that is going to end up in any kind of digestive disturbances or any other kind of deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies, because of these beverages. So that is where we have to pause. We have to decide and work on ourselves, saying that yes, this is it, I'm not going to take some more than this. Let me decide that I need to take 2 cups of tea, that's my favorite drink, so let me have it in moderation. Now let me give you some more small examples about what is craving. When we say craving, most of us have craving for chocolates, right? I think all of you all may be having a craving about chocolate. In this group too, there may be many who love to have chocolate. So what is it that we actually need from chocolate? So when we have a craving for chocolate, there is deficiency of many nutrients, which is the underlying cause. So what is that deficiency which can be filled with? If you have a craving for chocolate, you need to actually take small amount of that chocolate, probably in a probably you decide like probably once or twice a week or something like that. But if you're going to take the same chocolate in more amount, there you had it, where it's going to end up in many other health conditions, right? So what you need is magnesium, and what you eat instead, what to eat instead is you can take nuts, seeds, vegetables, and fruits. So whenever we have a craving for a wrong food, switch over to something which is better and which is going to give the same nutrient. So you will see that the magnesium deficiency is being compensated by taking nuts, seeds, vegetables, fruits, etc. Therefore, the craving for chocolate decreases. These are actually proved researches saying that the chromium deficiency or the carbon or the sulfur or tryptophan, which is a amino acid deficiency, is the reason why we have craving for sugary foods. So what we do, we start taking sugary foods or sugary beverages or sweets. Instead, the same components are present in broccoli, grapes, fresh fruits, probably cranberries, cabbage, cauliflower, raisins, spinach, etc. All these foods contain the same component. So when you start taking those, the sugary food craving starts decreasing. Similarly, for bread, pasta, and any other carbs, a body has a deficiency for nitrogen. So when you take high protein foods, obviously this craving will slowly start decreasing. Oily foods, it's been proved that when there is a calcium deficiency, we start wanting to take more of oily and fried foods. So organic milk or green leafy vegetables, because they are alkaline foods, they can help you sort this issue of craving. Salty foods, whenever we have salty foods, there is a deficiency of chloride and silicon. So when you're going to take nuts or milk, especially, which is helpful in preventing this craving. So these are researches which has been given by a lot of international papers, from which these studies have been proved that these are the nutrients that we require when we crave those kind of foods. So the researchers have come up with something called as a mind diet. Interestingly, the mind diet is nothing but, if nutritionists hear of this concept, they will understand what is Mediterranean diet and what is DASH diet. The Mediterranean diet is nothing but a diet which was inspired by Mediterranean countries, and they had a traditional eating habit which have a great impact in reducing the risk of heart disease. Similarly, there was something called as a DASH diet, or the dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So this diet helps in lowering the blood pressure. So these two are exclusive concepts. So the researchers wanted to find out if there was a relation between these diets and the effect of our brain health. So hence they combined these two diets and they called this as a mind diet, and it works wonders across the world. So which is slightly different from Mediterranean diet, which means that in Mediterranean diet, we consume a lot of grains, whole grains, plant-based foods, plus a whole lot of, monounsaturated fatty acid containing foods. We take a lot of proteins, healthy fats, fruits, vegetables. So a little bit of a deviation from the Mediterranean diet. There's some more mind-related nutrients such as omega-3 is added in the mind diet. So by the word mind diet, it simply means MIND, Mediterranean dash intervention for neurodegenerative delay. So neurodegeneration, most of the cognitive functions or the memory or anxiety or depression, depressive disorders, mood disorders, all these have been cured or probably treated in a better way by consuming this kind of Mediterranean diet, adjunct to any kind of psychiatric medications the patient is taking. So the mind diet is also the best option that they have identified in a lot of researches, the latest researches being one in National Institute of Health, which was published in 2020, which is the best option for lowering the risk for Alzheimer's disease. So I have summed up, these are some of the diets, these are some of the foods which are really going to be helpful for you to calm your mind, to create that space that we've been talking about, to create that emptiness or create that little bit of a stable mind compared to what we are now. Probably work on ourselves a little bit more, one step better, to reduce one emotion at a time. So therefore, we can simply help ourselves to create that better space to absorb the spiritual energy or to absorb the spiritual concepts or focus more on our spiritual growth. So let us understand what are these the foods or which we need to consume more. Very simple. They are very, very simple terminologies for all of you all can understand. Fruits, vegetables can help in anxiety disorders. But what we need to reduce consumption, fatty foods and sugars. So for mood disorders, it's proved that dark chocolate, for people who are chocolate lovers, you have an option. You can take dark chocolate. So what is dark chocolate? Contains a lot of serotonin. Serotonin is a happiness hormone, or it is a mood elevator. So dark chocolate also helps in decreasing the blood sugar. It is also very good for the heart. But how much of dark chocolate are we going to have? A lot of dark chocolate, definitely in moderation. So mood disorders, that can help. Cognitive function, omega-3 rich foods like flax seeds, nuts, fish oils, turmeric, etc. Alzheimer's and memory disturbances, virgin coconut oil has been proved to be very, very useful for memory disorders. Chia seeds, kiwi, walnuts, etc. And for depression and depressive symptoms or depression disorders, related disorders, a whole lot of fruits and vegetables play a good role. So you can identify these foods and keep your grocery list in such a way that these foods are more in your household, and you could reduce the consumption of fatty foods, sugary foods, stale and packaged foods. So I think in one of the earlier sessions in Hingori Sutras, I had mentioned about the tamasic foods, right? We had talked about the Rajasic, Tamasic, and the Sattvic foods. We had also come to the conclusion, like, Sattvic food is one of the best food for spiritual growth. So by Tamasic food, we meant that they were stale foods, packaged foods, processed foods. So over the ancient scriptures, they have mentioned that packaged and processed foods are bad for health. And now in the present researchers also, the same thing is carried over, saying that packaged and preserved foods contain a lot of preservatives which are very bad for the heart, which are very bad for our general health. Red meat, saturated fats, butter, simple sugars like direct sugars, etc., are not very good for health. White flour, alcohol, and sugary foods, all these exaggerate your depression symptoms. So therefore, let's focus more on those foods which are going to be helpful for us. So this is a very simple picture of a Mediterranean diet, and DASH diet includes a lot of vegetables. So in the Mediterranean diet pyramid, what you look at, it is just the base of the pyramid says that you need to exercise more, you need to have good weight control, and then it goes saying that take more of whole grain foods and plant oils. That is, plant-based oils are very good for health. Similarly, then you take more of vegetables, minimum of 2 to 3 portions of vegetables a day. Then it says saying that you need to take more of nuts and legumes, at least 2 to 3 portions of it. And then we say that fish, poultry, and eggs, which are like lean meat, calcium, dietary supplements, etc., like containing calcium, or direct dairy supplements containing calcium. And what we need to use sparingly is the one which is in the top, which is all refined, which is processed, pastas, bread, soda, sweet, red meat, butter, etc. So therefore, when we talk about the best foods for the mind, it's a very comprehensive, or what I could say is like simple pictures. You could just note down, everybody can understand what is there on the screen, right? So this is nothing but beans. You could take more. You can have lots of yellow, dark, green, red vegetables. You can take berries. Strawberries, blueberries are supposed to be excellent for memory, and you can take a lot of green leafy vegetables. Olive oil has also been proved to be excellent for the mind because it contains the monounsaturated fatty acid, which is very good for the mind. So what are the worst foods for the mind? I have already covered them, that they are the packaged foods, processed foods, high fat food, fried food, too much sugar, too much of red meat. So when we consume too much of these, too much of anything is bad, right? So when we consume too much of these, definitely we are attracting a whole lot of lifestyle disorders. So let us be really watchful and mindful when we say it's not like fill the mind with food, but let's be more mindful towards what we eat. Now, we also spoke about the low and high vibrational energy foods. Because being a spiritual platform here, I would like to share the role of low vibrational energy foods and the role of high vibrational energy foods. So it's been proved through ages or in ancient scriptures that these are the foods which have low vibrational energy. Again, artificial foods, artificial sweeteners, soft drinks, too much of coffee, alcohol, canned foods, packaged foods, the ones that you see on the screen, these are all low vibrational energy foods. We had also discussed about aura in the last session, about the vibrational energy that the food provides. Anyone who wishes to see could refer back to Hingori Sutra's videos. They are all already in the saved list. So the high vibrational energy foods are organic fruits, vegetables, more of herbal teas, spices, the simple natural foods which are there, as natural as possible. Lesser the processing, the better it is. Whole grains, and now the concept is to take more of millets compared to wheat. So these kind of foods have high vibrational energy. And finally, I would like to say that balance is the key. So when we understand that we need to balance the food and what we consume, how much we consume, we really can excel ourselves with, in our spiritual growth just by understanding the concept. It is just that awareness can help us grow more spiritually. So what do we do? Do we have to be using the mind? Let use us, or let us use the mind? Let us be the master of our mind. Now, how can we be the master of our mind? We can just simply observe what's happening around us. Let's observe the things rather than getting too much involved in all the things that, which we are actually performing in the day to day life. And if you're going to stay a little bit away from one step, a little bit lesser than the emotional being that we are, that's going to really help us create that space. Similarly, when we have a balance, it's going to help us more. Let us use our willpower more better to choose the right food choices for us. Let us create that empty space. Let us free the mind of the negative emotions with as much as possible, just to expand our spiritual growth. Let us use our free will to choose the best options. Therefore, I would like to end this talk by giving the most wonderful quote of the Buddha: to keep the body in good health, it is a duty for us, for otherwise we shall not be able to light the lamp of wisdom and keep our mind strong and clear. So therefore, let's look at this picture. What does it say? Very, very clear. There is observance, there is willpower, there is a whole lot of thing happening whether I need to take or not. But still, there is some kind of a willpower here. Why is it there a willpower here and not with us? What is the difference that we are not able to identify between us and the animals? We have somehow come to a point in human experience where we no longer intuitively know what is correct for us. So let's connect to the innate connection within us. That connection can help us create the right choice. Why is it that only human species on earth has this problem? Why is there not a single animal living in this natural environment that is overweight or suffering a chronic illness as a result of their diet? They just know what to eat. They just know where to stop. They just know where to have a control of. They are in touch with the innate intelligence that drives the food choices. As a result, they thrive. So let us work on ourselves on this simple aspect of what is called as the mind over food. So when you have created that space, my dear friends, I'm sure you would have understood the meaning of mind over food. So the meaning of the mind over food changes. Thank you all. Thank you all for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be a part of this conversation with all of you. Thank you once again, Hingori Sutras, for giving me this pleasure to talk to all of you.
Thank you, Ambika. That was truly, truly very informative and very inspiring. Very inspiring. And the scientific research and the case study that you shared with us would really is what we could say is food for thought. Yeah. And I have a question here, Ambika. What is the relation of the taste buds? I mean, the thought when you were talking about chocolates. Okay, I love chocolates. Yeah, and having them in moderation, and they're good for a mind, but a little bit of it, so it's good for depression. But chocolate tastes much better on the tongue than the other foods recommended by you. So how do you work that out?
And you are right, Anjali, that it tastes better on the tongue. But, that is what all of us are looking for, right? That immediate temporary relief, right? So we just need that momentary, we are giving into the senses momentarily, but we are not knowing the impact of that on a long term basis. So, say if you're going to have a chocolate one time, there's no problem, it's okay. But then, if you're going to repeatedly have it every time when you're low, you're going to go to a chocolate. So that means that you're not working on yourself, right? You're not stopping there, or you're not introspecting. Why am I taking chocolate, or why am I giving into this particular food? So the senses have taken control over you rather than you taking control over the senses. So when you have identified that, yes, I need to stop. Every time I'm taking a chocolate, let me just replace that. If I can give you a suggestion, you could just replace that with something lesser sugary, or probably, say take some fruit or some natural foods, which can actually reduce that craving. As I also mentioned about chocolate and magnesium. So probably there may be some mineral deficiency. That is why you're, continuously taking the chocolate, right? So small bite is fine, but not all the time.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with saying that your Rajasic qualities need to be brought down and Sattvic going up, the control of the senses.
Absolutely.
Lovely. Ambika, there was one more question here by Vidya asking, is soya milk better to consume than normal milk in terms of vibrations, in terms of for the mind?
Okay, so milk itself is an alkaline food. So once it goes inside your system, it's going to be really helpful for your system. So soya milk has got more better properties because it has got a high amount of protein. And but only thing is, soya milk is a processed form of milk, right? But presently, if you could make natural soya milk, that's the best. But there is no option. I would recommend taking unsweetened soya milk rather than taking sweetened or preservative loaded soya milk. So compared to the two, I would say that both of them have good qualities. Soya has better quality compared to the regular milk.
Right. Thank you, Ambika. Priya has a question here, Priya Mehra, saying, what is your opinion on following a vegan or gluten-free diet?
Okay, so vegan and gluten-free are all restrictive diets, because either the person chooses to restrict or stay away from all those foods from animal products, which is like vegan diet. Even vegan diet says that milk and certain other foods are also restricted. Um, so it is an individual choice. People can follow a gluten-free and vegan diet. There is no hard and fast rule that this has to be followed. But in certain disease conditions, like if there is a gluten intolerance, when the patient is not ready to cannot digest the gluten in the wheat or the chapatis or the biscuits, then there is no other choice. You have to take a gluten-free diet. But if you have no issues and there is digestion, everything is okay, and you don't have any bloating or anything with gluten, you can take a moderate amount of gluten in your diet. So there is absolutely no compulsion that we have to follow this gluten free or vegan diet. It's absolutely a personal choice. And more better, they say, like researchers have proved that gluten sometimes causes a lot of inflammation. So when we eliminate gluten for some time in our diet, it helps. So when we eliminate wheat or biscuits or gluten based foods, they help our digestive system.
Okay. So I mean, so you don't need to subscribe to the trend, is what you're saying. Is it is very individualistic.
Absolutely.
And certain amount of gluten is not all that bad as it's made out to be.
Correct.
Thank you, Ambika. Ambika, Preeti Singh has a question here saying that, nowadays there's a lot of adulterations. So how do you overcome these problems? Adulterations in milk and paneer, or the fruits and vegetables which come in with a lot of pesticides or are grown off season. So how would this affect? We do talk about eating a lot of fruit and vegetables and having paneer or dahi, but how would the adulterations affect our mind?
Right. So definitely they do affect, because if there are more of pesticides, there are more of colors, artificial colors. Especially some of the vegetables are coated with, green colors, or if you see green peas, if they are adulterated, even if you wash them, they will leave green color water, right? Similarly, there are certain other foods like turmeric has been adulterated with chromium, that is lead chromium. So there are a lot of adulteration tests which are carried out, but most of these foods which are like packaged, they go through this, FSSAI tests and everything. They have been studied thoroughly whether they are adulterated, and they are given certificate if they are not adulterated. So those are safe to consume. Those which have all these, legal, they're passed by the legal bylaws, they can be consumed. But by and large, what is actually recommended is organic. But how organic they are, we do not have an authenticity of that too, right? So if you have your own home kitchen garden, or few of your fruits, vegetables, you could cultivate at home. So these can be also followed at home. But certain things which is beyond our control, I think follow them in moderation, I would say. But if whatever is available in the market, try to wash the vegetables more better, soak them in water. If you feel dark colored vegetables, which is like unusually colored, try to soak them in water, or wash them or soak them in a little bit of vinegar, and see whether the color runs. So these kind of tests can be done and then consumed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ambika. Another question here that you spoke about addictions, right? It is before you even, sometimes you don't even realize it, that you just, the consumption of, say, tea or coffee or any food or chocolate or whatever just sort of increases and builds up, sometimes due to boredom, sometimes due to stress. Yeah. So how do you recommend someone breaks that addiction? Of course, you need a lot of mental willpower, but sometimes not everybody has that willpower. So
Correct.
is there any other alternative way that you can suggest that we break those food addictions?
Absolutely. There are ways. Number one, as you said, rightly said, is willpower is absolutely important. But in case it is not possible, first we need to seek counseling help, right? The first step is to go to a professional expert and share. If it is the addiction has gone beyond control, you need to take professional help. Now, as far as food is concerned, what you could do is we need to replace the particular food which causes the addiction, identify which is the food which is the addictive food, what can be replaced, which has got a similar, probably, what the mind wants, basically. It's something which is similar appearance or a color or a flavor or a texture, right? Say, I always tell my patients, if you have an addiction to tea, why don't you switch to green tea? Right? So it's like giving a similar kind of a food, and you were like actually tricking the mind. So it is like, so when instead of taking 4 cups of regular tea, I would take 2 cups of tea and 2 cups of green tea. I would, prescribe that. So that would sort of balance the mind and say that, yes, I took tea, but yes, I took something good also. So that is one way. The second thing which has been, addiction, if it has gone beyond a control, definitely, as I said, which will require a help. But if it is well within the control, it is because of boredom, or it is because of not knowing what to take, then I think you switch over to something healthy food choices. Make a list of the foods that I am addicted to. Make a list of, find out how many times in the day you are taking, and then set a goal. Create your simple goal. We always call it as a smart goal in coaching and in therapy, which we do. Like we do the neuro linguistic programming and a lot of therapies like REBT, etc., where we generally say that if you are having a particular food and you need to replace that particular food, what you need to do is you create a goal. In how much time can I get over this? How many times am I taking now, and in within 1 week or in within a month, how many times am I going to bring it down? So we create a goal. And by goal, what I mean is it needs to be like a SMART goal. So SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time based. So we make a specific goal. Yes, within this much time, let me reduce my chai. and we make a measurable goal. Like, yes, this is the number of times. Achievable. Is it overly unrealistic? Please don't create a goal. If it's a realistic goal, create a goal. Then make it as a time base. So goal setting helps a lot in addiction. And replace the food with the right choices, which I've already mentioned. They really, really help a lot.
Right. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Yeah.
Right.
How effective is intermittent fasting? Do you recommend it? And I'm going to combine another question is, how does fasting affect the mind?
Okay. Fasting has got a lot of advantages. Actually, it helps you to get that willpower. It helps you develop resilience, right? So why do we fast actually? So by fasting, let's be very, very clear about the definition of fasting. Because what's happening now in the modern world is people say, I fast. But on the fast day, I have observed that most of the people consume, a lot of carbohydrates, like, potatoes or sabudana khichdi or varai ka chawal or batata chivda, those foods which are definitely not allowed in fasting. What does fasting actually mean? Fasting was meant to create that space. Fasting was meant to give a break to your digestive system. And so that there is something called autophagy, which happens when you fast. So by autophagy, what I mean is the same principle is used in intermittent fasting, which is autophagy is your own body cells are going to eat those, the negative cells. So it's called like autophagy, auto system of your own body, processes. So when you're going to do fasting, there is a break to your system. So the system rewires and function better. That is what is called fasting. You give a break. If you're taking solid food for a long period of time, I always tell my patients to fast once in 15 days or once a week, detox your system. So these are other words of fasting. But if you're going to call fasting with a lot of food, that is not fasting at all. It's just a change of your meal habits or meals. That's it. So fasting definitely helps in spiritual growth too, because of the resilience that you develop, because of your own, the choices that you make when you fast. So there is a lot of willpower which is required while fasting. And I should definitely tell in this audience that if you have any kind of health ailments like disease conditions like diabetes, or definitely consult your doctor or your dietitian or a registered expert to consulting them. You have to start fasting because we don't want any kind of sugars to go low or anything during the fasting. So that we need to take into consideration. But otherwise, fasting is fantastic for your health. But what you fast matters a lot. And as I said, intermittent fasting, it depends on the number of hours of fasting. So minimum of 8 hours of fasting is recommended through researchers, we say. But if you're going to fast for 10 to 12 hours, it's even more good. But more than 12 to 14 hours, your body, the biological clock starts ticking down. We need to replenish with some food.
Right. Ambika, thanks for that, because there's a lot of people think that 16 hours of intermittent fasting would help me burn my fat a lot more. And so you don't recommend 16 hours, is it?
It is individualistic. See, one diet doesn't fit all. There is no one size fits all. So it's very, very personalized. And
Right.
when you're going to do any kind of recommendation, it is 100% personalized. So we have to study. We have to, take a history of the person. Is intermittent fasting okay for all? No. The answer is no. We need to
Right.
take the dietary history and then intervene.
Right. Thank you, Ambika. Ambika, Priya Vakil has a question here. Which are the metabolism boosting foods?
Right. Yeah. So these are like superfoods. They are called as superfoods or functional foods. So the foods which like, how do we increase our metabolism? First is when you take small frequent meals. Say every 2 hourly you increase your take some small amount of food, but in frequent intervals. That's number one. The metabolic foods are those which will help you to keep your metabolic fire within us, right? Active. So these foods actually help in the digestive system, help in the heart function. So they are called as functional foods. So examples of those foods are flax seeds, we have methi seeds, we have all the fruits, like they contain flavonoids, they're all metabolic foods. We have spirulina, we have all the chia seeds, sunflower, pumpkin. All these foods are metabolically active foods. By active foods, it doesn't mean that it gives sugar or gives that energy. They are those foods which will help in your functional ability of your body. So they are called as metabolic food and help you to improve your thyroid status. Basically, because thyroid is a metabolic disorder, and all the lifestyle diseases can be prevented when you're going to consume these kind of foods in more quantity. Those foods which I mentioned, like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, Mediterranean diet, they all come under the category of metabolic foods.
Talking about thyroid, there was a question here. Does intermittent fasting help reducing weight in hypothyroid?
See, as I said, again, hypothyroidism is a metabolic disorder. There may be weight gain or may not be weight gain in many patients. But if there is weight gain in hypothyroid patients, we need to focus on weight gain by a balanced nutritional plan. And if intermittent fasting is required, it can be done for a few, days, like, for a small number of days. And we cannot call it like just by intermittent fasting, the person is going to lose weight or, get rid of the thyroid status. Thyroid is a hormonal dysfunction. So you cannot, it's a chronic thyroid, thyroid hormone dysfunction, right? So when you lose weight, definitely your thyroid numbers will improve, but your thyroid medication would continue because thyroid is a hormone which is required, thyroxine. So I would not recommend that, weight loss will be helpful, but again, we have to see the individualistic goals for the patient.
Right. While we're talking about hormonal imbalances, we have a question here about what are the foods that would help in a perimenopausal state. Now, very often in this perimenopausal state, your mind plays complete havoc. You lose focus. It's difficult to concentrate and while you're meditating. That sudden calmness just disappears or dissipates in thin air. You see, and there's so many things. So, what are the foods that can really calm you down?
Exactly. There are lovely foods. It's called as PMS, by the way, the short form for premenstrual syndrome.
Not I'm not talking about the premenstrual syndrome. I'm talking about perimenopausal.
Okay. Yeah. So the perimenopausal is a stage which is like pre-menopausal, like prior to menopause, during the process of menopause. So the same holds good even for PMS. But in perimenopausal, what happens is there is a lot of weight gain, especially it is called as abdominal weight gain. It is called as gynoid obesity. So what happens is the patient is very uncomfortable that you start putting on weight in the stomach and in the abdominal viscera, etc. So during that time, there is a lot of low feeling, depression. These are very commonly seen in perimenopausal women. What we need to do is we get into the sugar craving, right? We just want to take something sweet, something like to elevate the mood. So people just rush to take some amount of sugar or something like a chocolate or probably which will help them to boost their energy. But actually what is required at that time, consume a lot of fruits. These are excellent for you. They will prevent bloating. They give the same amount of carbohydrate, which is like fruit sugars are excellent for you. Fructose helps in perimenopausal symptoms. Plus, the mood swings can be really, really controlled when you're going to take good amount of fruits, nuts, etc., which have got soluble fiber. The fiber will prevent the bloating. The soluble fiber prevents bloating. Take good amount of probiotics like curds or lactobacillus. Like one of the studies have shown that, lactobacillus, which is present in curds, that is the bacteria, the good bacteria, which is present in curds and yogurt, etc., help a lot in these kind of conditions. So this is hormonal, right? So we can blame it on the hormone, which is causing the havoc in our body. But definitely there is something beyond hormone too. We do have something to intervene. When you are going to introduce those particular foods, automatically the effect of those will decrease. So I would definitely recommend you all, whoever has these symptoms, to take good amount of fruits and take plenty of water, because water prevents a lot of cramps during these periods, or perimenopausal period, there is a lot of bloating, there is a lot of uncomfortable feeling. So when you take good amount of water, the hydration helps you to calm you down. So water therapy, hydrotherapy as it is called, it calms you down. It helps you to think better. It helps you to take better decisions during these periods and not flare up, as we call. So when we say, right, when you're angry, drink water. So your mood goes haywire, take plenty of water and water containing fruits and vegetables. That's a very good choice here.
There's another question here. Thanks, Ambika, about Ambika ji. Great session as always. And they would like to know that, okay, we've already covered this. Sorry, in our fasts, we tend to eat a lot of carbs that you've covered. There is also a question which says that, for most of us, while we're burning the midnight oil due to our chaotic IT jobs, any suggestion on what we can do to help ourselves?
Yeah, right.
Or, either burning the midnight or IT jobs, or just staying up night watching TV and sleeping late. So
Yes.
there's always binging at that time.
Right. So binging late night is absolutely not a good habit. So let me give you this concept of what time we need to eat and what time we need to sleep. So we need to have at least 3 hours gap between our dinner and our sleep timing. This is number one. Number two, what we eat after 11 p.m. definitely plays a big role on your metabolic, diseases. Like, for example, say when you're going to have a cup of coffee, right? Because you're sitting late night, or you have something like green tea because you're working late night, because it's giving you that pep, or it's stimulating your system. You will see after a period of like number of days when you're consuming like this, you will slowly start getting insomnia, because the sleep is definitely going to be affected, because your nervous system is stimulated when you're taking all these stimulants. So instead, you could take milk based foods, you could take protein based, any kind of protein drinks. They help a lot, rather than taking any carbohydrate containing food. So what we generally recommend is fruits are never to be taken in the night, for sure, because they will again cause a lot of abdominal disturbances. The absorption is poor, so early morning is better. So late night, when you take, do not consume biscuits, cookies, preserved, processed foods. Take plenty of water. Do create a habit of going to sleep early and waking up early. That is what I would recommend. Like, if you're going to sit late night, if it's a BPO or work schedule, then there is a whole lot of circadian rhythm which is changed. That is, your biological clock is completely opposite. So we have to plan a correct diet according to the late night or work shifts, and we need to see to it that you sleep 6 to 8 hours for sure, and then that can have a help effect on your system. So that is how we need to actually adjust our sleep and eating timings. And please do not consume anything processed or out of the packet, because that's the easiest to make midnight. So instead, plenty of water, and probably a cup of warm milk. Warm milk can even induce sleep, because it contains a substance which can induce sleep. It is tryptophan, which will help you to have a good sleep and improves your sleep quality too.
Right. Thank you. Ambika, one question here while we talk about foods and we're talking about, there's this question then, supplements, right? What do you think about local foods vis-a-vis foods like nuts, dietary supplements, which originating from other countries? Would you recommend that?
I would definitely recommend locally grown, seasonally available natural foods, because anything which is natural, which is close to your nature. We are now in a, working towards our spiritual goal, right? We are all in our path of focusing on our spiritual growth. So more we are going to focus on things which are artificial, or taken in the form of a tablet, compared to a vitamin which is present in the natural foods. that is definitely going to take more time for absorption, etc. Right? So it's always good to take locally grown, seasonally available foods rather than if you're going to have mangoes, take it in the season of mangoes. Do not take after a year when you're making a mango crush or a amras, which is kept in the bottle. So that will work better on your body. So more close we are to the nature and to our body, which is actually a part of this nature, right? So more better our aura will be, or spiritual energy is going to be. So like in the last time I had already mentioned in one of our talks that the more the better, fresher the vegetables are, the day when it is cooked, you consume the same day. Do not store or refrigerate the foods for a long period of time. They lose their spiritual energy. They lose their aura energy. The foods have an aura energy. So the more local, the more natural, the better they are.
Yeah. Thank you, Ambika. Ambika, just one last question is in case of peanuts addiction, which is quite similar to any food addiction, is there a choice, or what do you read out of that? If someone addicted to peanuts.
Okay, so what you can do is a handful of peanuts is okay. It is not going to, because they also contain good amount of fats. Good fats are also present in peanuts, but too much of anything is not okay. So instead of peanuts, what I could recommend is you could have roast all these nuts and seeds together, like almonds, walnuts, small amount of these nuts, which are heart friendly nuts. They are called as heart friendly nuts. So you could roast them, and you could add some seeds, all the various seeds, and you could add some other, like rolled oats or white oats, which is again soluble fiber containing food, and then use them, or instead of the same peanut feeling is what that we require. So as I was mentioning, Anjali, it is the feeling that we need to get from the food, right? Food gives us a feeling that yes, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling full, or I'm feeling energetic, or I'm not feeling good, so I need to take a sweet. So if you're going to replace the same feeling with some other food, it does not matter what the food is, right? So we just have to replace with the right food which gives the right feeling. So peanuts can be replaced with something like seeds and all these, which is going to give you the same feeling as peanuts. The same crunchy feeling is what we require, right? So you can do
Absolutely.
all those things, and these are the ways to trick our mind. As I said, it's like give the mind a little bit and take a lot out of it, which is what is actually recommended.
Right. Thank you, Ambika. Ambika, there's a question here. If someone needs to get in touch with you for a consultation, could you please give us your number so that I can type it in here?
Yes. Do you want me to share it, or do you
Well,
want me?
yeah, just you can speak it out here, and I'm just going to type it in the messages if you.
Okay,
Mm.
fine. They could visit my website, ambikanair.com. So the
Okay.
details are there. And my number you can take it down, Anjali.
Yeah, sure.
It's like 9011
9011
25
25
6500.
6500. Right. Right. So here it is ambikanair.com, and your mobile number is 9011256500. Yeah. So
Thank you.
if you need to consult Ambika, her details have been put up on the comments chat. And with this, Ambika, I would really like to thank you from Hingori Sutras for making it such an interesting session for us, and hoping that we all calm our minds in times of today. Yeah. So
Right.
with this, thank you once again, and thank you, dear audience. It was a pleasure having you all again.
Thank you so much. Thank you again to Hingori Sutras. Thank you, Anjali. Thank you, wonderful audience, for all your questions. I'm always happy to help you. Let's do something today. Whatever you have heard today, try to work. Probably one small step, if you can work, or a little bit of a space, that one dot, if you could create today to free yourself, to improve your spiritual growth, that would be really, really good. I'm really thankful for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you next Sunday. Good night. Sayonara. The office. Goodbye.